There are moments in life when we look back at a series of events, a strange string of bad luck, relationships that suddenly fell apart, doors that were once open and suddenly slammed shut, and we are forced to ask ourselves, was this really just a coincidence? Stoics don't jump to conclusions. We don't get carried away with unfounded hypotheses, but the same philosophy teaches us to observe phenomena closely, to distinguish between what is natural and what is a sign of outside intervention, not out of fear, but out of initiative. Even in today's modern world, forms of magic, evil, and negative energy still exist. They just go by different names, and they hide in seemingly harmless behaviors. There are forces that do not want you to be at peace. There are people who, out of jealousy or anger, are ready to manipulate your destiny from the shadows. In this video, I'll share with you 5 clear signs that you may be the target of some kind of invisible attack. A psychic curse, a magical spell, signs that most people ignore until it's too late. But you won't be. You'll learn how to recognize it, protect yourself, and reclaim control of your life. Before we dive into each sign, remember this: time is a non-renewable resource. If you feel doubtful, don't hesitate. Watch to the end, or if necessary, speed up. Every second you understand the truth is a second you take back your power. Are you ready? Together we will expose the hidden plots, not with fear, but with understanding, courage, and belief that we can face any force without losing our inner peace. Signs 1. Intense intuition and spiritual disorders. When intuition warns you before reason does. Every religion, every ancient tradition in the world, there are concepts. In every culture, every religion, every ancient tradition in the world, there is a very similar concept. Intuition is the whispering of the soul. It is not superstition, nor is it a vague emotion. Intuition is wisdom that transcends reason, a subtle warning system embedded in the deepest consciousness of every human being. The 5th sign, comment on a dog, the most sign that you're affected by a or negative energy, intuitive. And here's the 5th sign, and one of the most important, that you may be under the influence of a curse or negative energy. Constant intuitive warnings, accompanied by disturbances in your spiritual life that you can't explain. With yourself, how many times you've felt a sense of unease? Be honest with yourself. How many times have you felt a vague sense of insecurity, even though everything around you is quiet? How many times have you walked into a room and felt like someone was watching you from the shadows, but there was no one there? How many times have you just met someone and immediately felt like your body wanted to withdraw? Not because of what they said, not because of what they did, it was just the energy they emitted that left you feeling drained. Intuition is the first bell that rings before any physical or emotional symptoms occur. And when your intuition repeats the same warning over and over again in different situations, stop, listen, because your soul is trying to tell you something important. Common symptoms include feeling of being watched even when no one is around. There is a heavy feeling in the air, especially in places that used to be peaceful. A hunch about someone you once trusted but now feel strange and wary of. Recurring dreams, often nightmares, of being chased, being paralyzed, or being surrounded by unknown entities. And the special thing is, these signs often have no specific cause. You will not find a reasonable explanation from doctors, psychologists, or even your own friends. And that is what makes people easily ignore or deny. In Stoicism, we are not allowed to deny emotions. We are taught to observe them from a distance, enough to understand their nature. And if the feeling of anxiety, restlessness, fatigue appears without any logical cause, but repeats itself in cycles, then it is no longer an emotion. It is a signal. Another thing to watch out for: disruptions in your daily spiritual practice. If meditation, prayer, chanting or journaling used to bring you peace, and now they feel heavy, chaotic, disconnected, then you need to ask yourself who or what is coming between me and my spiritual source. Maybe you feel like every time you pray your mind is scattered, or like something is blocking your prayers. Maybe your sleep is light and full of nightmares, or every time you meditate you feel shaky, restless, unable to stay still. These are not just stress. They are energetic interference. How to deal with this? First, don't discount your intuition. Every feeling you've ever called weird is actually true. Intuition is a spiritual compass. It doesn't need proof, it just needs you to believe and act on it. Write down your feelings, not just to remember, but to look for patterns. When did it happen? Where? After whom? Second, start clearing your personal energy. You may not see the culprit, but you can clear the energy field around you. Meditate with high-frequency music, take a sea salt bath, burn herbs like sage or Palo Santo. Use protective stones like obsidian, tourmaline, not superstitions but ancient practices that have been proven. Third, rebuild your mental fence. Every morning, take a few minutes to visualize white light surrounding you, like a protective shield. Repeat this powerful affirmation over and over again. I am light. I am protected. No energy can pass through my fence without my permission. Energy follows belief, and when you believe you have the power to reject negativity, you take one step out of its influence. The Stoics do not believe that we should avoid the darkness. We look it straight in the eye, but instead of letting the darkness overwhelm us, we light the torch within ourselves, and when our intuition speaks, we do not ignore it, we do not discount it, we do not panic. We listen, we learn, and we act with the serenity of someone who has chosen to live consciously. Signs 2. Strange physical and emotional symptoms when your body speaks before your mind. One of the core principles of Stoicism is to listen to reason to control emotions. Does the mechanism, but there is no denying that the body is an inseparable part of the soul, and sometimes it is the body that is the first wake-up call when we are under attack from a depth that the naked eye cannot see, the depth of the spirit. The second sign that you may be the target of a curse or a spell is strange physical and emotional symptoms that appear suddenly, last for a long time, but cannot be explained by any medical diagnosis. Imagine someone who was once healthy, active and optimistic, someone like Linda, a name that represents thousands of others who have told similar stories. Linda was proactive, successful and full of life, but then within a few weeks she was no longer herself. A deep fatigue, unlike any she had ever felt before, took over her body. She couldn't sustain her energy at the end of the day, despite getting enough sleep, eating healthily, and having no medical conditions detected by a battery of blood tests, scans, or thyroid tests. When asked how she felt, Linda described it. It wasn't like I was tired from lack of sleep, it was like something was sucking the life out of me, like my battery was being drained every hour. Not only was Linda physically strange, but emotionally too. She suffered from unexplained bouts of depression and anxiety attacks that came upon her when she entered familiar rooms or when she came into contact with certain people. Worst of all were the nightmares, a form of psychic sleep paralysis where she felt as if she were being watched, trapped in her dreams, with dark figures hovering around her bed. The Stoics understood that every sensation has a cause, but when the cause is not in the body, in the mind, or in objective circumstances, then we are forced to look to invisible causes. And this is when the signs of spiritual intervention begin to become apparent. The hallmark of this type of symptom is that it doesn't respond to any of the usual treatments. Antidepressants don't help. Sleeping pills don't stop nightmares. Coffee or energy drinks don't ease the lethargy. What usually helps you cope with stress meditation, prayer, yoga now feels even more disrupted or strangely inaccessible. Ever called to accept, but this is not. All of this suggests a difficult but necessary conclusion. This is not an internal problem, but the influence of an external force. Some energy is interfering with the natural flow of life force, your strength. Some energy is manipulating and interfering with the natural flow of your life force and spirit. If you are an artist, disappear, sir. If you are good communicator, sudden shy lost for words, a sporty strange, injuries begin to appear. The attack was often aimed directly at notice. If you are an artist, creativity disappears without a trace. If you are a good communicator, suddenly become shy, insecure, lose your words. If you are an athlete, strange injuries start appearing. The attack is often aimed at the most essential part of you. Your universe and unique identities are, where values and unique identities are created. What can other observe and record, write it down. So what can you do? Observe and take notes. You feel weak, disorientation. That's when, who, where. Is there any connection between? You will seeing the patterns. Lindeth that every her disappeared. Write down the times when you feel weak, depressed or lost. When? After whom? Where? Are there any connections between the events? You'll be surprised to see patterns begin to emerge, like Linda, who found that all her symptoms disappeared when she went to her sister's house in another state, but returned shortly after she comes into contact with a jealous co-worker. Stoicism teaches us, what cannot be controlled, observe. What can be observed clearly enough can be directed, the impact. If the influence that you is intentional, you can start. Once you recognize that the influences attacking you are intentional, you can begin to plan to protect your energy, no longer living in a helpless victim state. The second sign with these signs, sign of proof. Evidence that you are not simply experiencing. This is the second sign, and when combined with the others, it becomes a powerful indicator that you're not simply going through a rough patch, but rather facing an invisible force that's trying to undermine you. Signs 3. Unexplained, repetitive negative patterns, when fate is manipulated from the dark. Naturally, there are ups and downs. Stoics accepted that. Integral of the definition becomes too perfect. At those was solidus, which can be intervention. Life, by its very nature, has its ups and downs. The Stoics accepted that as part of destiny. But sometimes the coincidences become too perfect, too frequent, too directed at the places you thought were the most secure. It's no longer fate, but rather intentional intervention. First, that you may be being influenced by a threata, a form of magic. The first sign that you may be under the influence of a spiritual curse or a form of black magic is a series of negative events that repeat themselves with great intensity in areas of your life that were once the most stable. And the most important thing is that there is no rational explanation for them. No cause, no logic, just consequences and a feeling of helplessness. Be good, you sick weakness that the doctor not find. Business, now customers turns face, evaporates without. There is, or in loveness started. Imagine this, you were once in good health, but now you are constantly sick and your doctor can't figure out why. Your business was once booming, but now customers cancel orders, partners turn on you and money evaporates without warning. Or in love. A relationship that was once filled with laughter turns into a battlefield, with arguments starting over seemingly meaningless things. These aren't just difficult times, they are a pattern of intentional sabotage. The bottom line here is, everything fell apart at the same time, in a short period of time. Exactly what it used to bring you, a sense of security, strength, money, love, creativity or relationships, and it attacks exactly the things that once gave you a sense of security. Your health, your money, your love, your creativity, or your social connections. When 3 or 4 aspects of your life collapse simultaneously for no apparent reason, you are no longer living in a world of normal bad luck. You are dealing with a form of metaphysical sabotage. Another thing to note, these events often occur right when you're about to achieve something important. About to sign a big contract, your computer crashes. On a romantic date, someone calls with bad news. Almost to success, an unexpected accident pulls you back from the starting line. Every time you're about to reach a milestone, some force pulls you back. This is no longer a coincidence. This is an attack. Stoics don't run away from reality. They look at it. And one of the best ways to understand what's happening is to write it down and keep track. Start a journal of strange events, unexpected disruptions, people you interacted with before everything went wrong. Record the dates, the feelings, the context, even the seemingly innocuous ones. Because when you start observing with awareness, patterns will emerge. You'll see that negative events always happen after you meet a certain person, go to a certain place, or are about to achieve something important. This sign alone cannot conclude that you are under a spell, but if it is combined with the next signs that I will share, the picture can flip in a moment. This sign alone cannot be considered a sign that you are under a spell, but if it is combined with the next signs that I will share, the picture will gradually become clear, without asked questions, and in a world where most people go through pain without ever asking questions, your own awareness will be your first line of defense. Signs 4. Strange objects and unusual arrangements. When living space becomes an invisible battlefield. Simple but easily overlooked. Energy is always available. There is a simple but easily overlooked truth. Energy always leaves a trace. Even though cannot be weighed, matter, energy, especially negative energy, is always in search of. To most popular, the invisible force. To implant toxic energy to your life thrust. Physical objects, even though it's invisible and immeasurable, like matter, energy, especially negative energy, always finds a way to latch onto something. And one of the most common ways that invisible forces implant toxic energy into your life is through physical objects. Third of the off a curse or spell. The third sign that you are under a curse or spell is you start to notice strange objects, unusual arrangements, or out-of-place details in your living space. They are not just there by chance. They are not there as decoration. They are there for a specific reason: to hold, channel, and amplify negative energy directed towards you. It doesn't have to be a goatskin talisman or magic powder from an ancient book. Modern magic is sophisticated. It uses objects so ordinary you might miss them. A small bag containing herbs tied with red thread hidden under the rug. A small jar containing your hair, fingernails, or photos is placed quietly behind the bookcase. A few stones or coins arranged in a strange shape in the corner of the yard, off in the corner of the yard, or in front of the door. The pictures, even family photos, are upside down, tilted tear photo, tilted photo frame, that you do not remember who, that you don't remember who touched. These, it is important to understand, these objects do not appear by chance. They are usually placed deliberately. They are often placed intentionally at strong energy points, where you pass by frequently, where you sleep, work, meditate. These are the areas most susceptible to energy intrusion. The main door, the bedroom, under the bed, the windowsill, the corner of the desk, the familiar chair, even your car. At those points, energy goes in and out, intersects and circulates, so manipulating the energy field there is very effective. Another common case is tampering with personal items. Bracelets, watches, perfumes, clothes you wear, scarves, or everyday items like toothbrushes, combs, phones. If an item you used to love suddenly feels heavy, tired, or just uncomfortable to the touch, don't ignore it. Intuition doesn't lie. Your body always knows what's hurting you before your mind does. Remember. And here's something you should definitely remember. Never touch suspicious objects directly with your bare hands. Energy, especially programmed negative energy, physical. If you find a strange, use, tweezers or McCloth sealed, please be, burning or burying deep. Energy, especially negative, programmed energy, can be transmitted through physical contact. If you find an odd object, use gloves, tweezers or a clean cloth to pick it up. Place it in a sealed bag, take it as far away from your home as possible, and, if possible, destroy it by burning or burying it, with a clear statement that you have severed all energetic connections with it. Also, start keeping detailed notes. Where, when, and after what event did you find the object? How did you feel before and after you found it? Have there been any strangers visiting your home recently? Who has access to your living space that you haven't noticed? These seemingly small details can be the key to figuring out who is behind it. One more thing to note, sometimes the foreign object is not an object at all but a deliberate disturbance. For example, a photograph is moved, a book you never read is flipped open, a window you always kept closed is suddenly opened, the bed is made in a way you never used to. These are subtle ways of marking energy, creating disturbances within the space that used to be your quietest place. Are in no hurry to assign M for everything, but also for nothing. Stoics are not quick to label everything spiritual, but they also do not allow themselves to live blindly. To live blindly, we observe and act on way. If the sign with emotional instability, broken, and strong intuition tells you that yes is wrong, Tito not to be afraid but to understand, not to panic, we observe, compare, and act rationally. If the physical signs match up with emotional turmoil, broken relationships, and a strong intuition telling you something is wrong, then you need to listen, not to fear, but to understand, not to panic, but to act. Sometimes a small cloth bag, because sometimes a small cloth bag hidden in the corner of the closet is not just useless trash. It's not just harmless trash. It could be the footprints of someone manipulating the energy of your life. But effective you have. Next thing to regain right to do is quietly but effectively, and now you've seen it. The next thing is to take back control of your space, every corner, every object, every energy flow. Signs 5. Unusual changes in relationships. When people who once loved you suddenly become strangers. The most solid that helps people overcome the vicissitudes of connection itself is the connection between people. 1. The strongest pillars that helps people overcome the tumultuous life is the connection between people, family, friends, colleagues, partners. All are the blood vessels in the social circle. But if one day you suddenly realize that those connections are starting to crack, not following the usual logic, without a clear cause, you should stop and observe more deeply. The fourth sign that you may be the victim of a spiritual curse or some form of energy manipulation is close relationships suddenly become cold, tense, or broken suddenly, inexplicably. Not the petty conflicts that have accumulated over time, not the inherent differences in personality, but the sudden change in someone you once trusted, a friend who shared your secrets, who was always there when you were down, now suddenly avoids you, cancels appointments, doesn't respond to messages. When you talk to them in person, they don't have a specific reason. They just say, "I don't know why, I just feel weird." The Stoics understood that people's emotions are highly influenced by their environment. But when one person, then two, then three people around you start to change their attitudes all at the same time, it's no longer an individual emotion, it's a pattern. And that pattern may have been triggered by an invisible force that's sowing the energy between you and those around you. You may notice old friends become distant, Co-workers suddenly become cold, reserved, or backstabbing. Over suddenly jealous, suspicious, angry for unreasonable reasons. Your family misunderstands and criticizes you without you being able to clearly explain why. Worse still is the noise in communication. Messages don't arrive. Emails get lost. What you say gets misinterpreted. You send a friendly message, it sounds like an insult. You leave a normal message, it sounds like a threat. It's like there's an undercurrent distorting all the channels of communication between you and the world. This can lead to isolation, one of the most subtle and dangerous strategies of psychic magic, because when you are cut off from your support network, you become vulnerable, easily manipulated, and less able to recognize your enemies. A curse doesn't just want to hurt you, it wants to leave you alone, with no one to share with no one to warn you, with no one to help you see the abnormality. The ancients called this a dividing spell, and while time has passed and the form has changed, the principle remains the same. Plant doubt in the minds of others so that they will naturally distance themselves from you. No threats, no arguments, just plant a seed of doubt and let the negative energy do the rest. How do you deal with this? First, don't react with anger. A friend who turns their back on you isn't always a traitor. They may just be a secondary victim. Watch for changes, not just in them, but in the atmosphere around you. Second, increase face-to-face contact instead of electronic communication. Eye to eye, heart to heart. It's harder to mess up. When a relationship is truly under a spell, face-to-face contact will help you see the eye contact, the energy, the strangeness or disconnection. Third, write down any suspicious events, twisted words, twisted conversations, strange reactions. Write them down. When you read them over time, you may see a recurring pattern. Finally, remember, what they show may not be their true nature. The anger they express, the hatred you feel, is sometimes not theirs. It is an external energy that is temporarily taking over. In Stoic philosophy, we learn to see events in the light of reason and compassion. Not all people who are drifting away from you are bad. Some are being manipulated. And forgiveness, steadfastness, is how you keep your soul clean in the spiritual vortex.